It's the question a lot of Nashville Predators fans are asking, and the campaign the Predators themselves are pushing. Does Juuse Saros have a chance to win the Vezina Trophy? We'll debate whether he should versus whether he actually will. What are his actual chances? Plus, the Predators out of the playoff race, but two big games left on the schedule. How should the team approach these last two games? We'll talk about it today on the Locked On Predators podcast.
Your Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Predators your first listen of the day. Every single day, we are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast available to you wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm a writer at Penalty Box Radio. Normally, I have a partner in crime, but Ann Kimmel is off today. We didn't have a show yesterday. Both Ann and I were feeling a little bit under the weather, so we missed the day after the Predators getting eliminated from playoff contention. Let's just do a little cross for the Predators' sudden playoff chances. It seems like this was kind of going to be the ending to the story all along, didn't it? It just never felt like the Predators, as much as they scratched and clawed their way back into the conversation, it just seems like too much happened down that stretch. Not just injuries, but a couple of bad losses in there too. Chances for the Predators to really kind of take control of their narrative. It just seems like the Predators could never really get that one win, that one big win to kind of take control of their own fate. You know, the latest, of course, the most obvious one was against the Winnipeg Jets the last week. The winner of that game would have had control of their playoff destiny. Predators lost that. You know, there's other games like the Penguins game where the Preds really had a chance to kind of take control and be like, nope, we're officially back in it. It just seems like the Predators never really got that one win. But again, if you would have told me we would be 1 week left in the season, not even 1 week, like 3 days left in the NHL regular season, and we would still be talking about the Preds playoff chances, realistic playoff chances, I don't think anybody was predicting that back the day after the trade deadline, especially after guys like Roman Josi and Matt Duchene went down during that span. That doesn't mean the Predators don't have a lot to play for still. You know, you want to finish strong. They got the Minnesota Wild tonight at Bridgestone Arena. They also have the Colorado Avalanche tomorrow night. These two teams are still fighting for position in the Central Division. Minnesota, you know, still has a chance to get some home ice, possibly. Dallas and Colorado are fighting for that number one seed, which is a big difference because whoever gets number one in the Central is going to play Seattle first, and that is a much preferred outcome than playing the loser of that race. You know, rather play Seattle than Minnesota, I think, at this point. So both of these teams are going to have something to play for. Absolutely. So this isn't going to be a game in which, you know, the Predators just kind of can skate out there and the other team is just kind of skating out there, resting guys. Everybody is going to have something to play for in this game. So it's going to still have that kind of big feel environment, that big game feel that I think the Predators would still absolutely love to have right now. And that's important because even though the Preds aren't in the playoff chase, they're getting an opportunity to play two pretty critical games down the stretch, albeit for other teams in which the other teams are going, or games in which the other teams are going to leave everything out on the ice. They're going to have something to play for. The Predators want to be in that situation. And we talked to John Hynes yesterday. He said, you know, everybody who's been up, who's been playing is going to play in this game. You know, he's not just sending Evangelista and Tomasino and the whole gang back to Milwaukee to get ready for the Admirals playoff chase. the ads play games up until Sunday, so they're probably going to go down for that. But at this point, the guys that got you to this point, they're going to be on the ice for the Nashville Predators. So this is another opportunity for those young guys we mentioned, Evangelista, Tomasino, even guys like Igor Afanasyev. They are going to get an opportunity to play some critical moments in a critical game this late in the season. So what's the Predators' mindset in this game? Ask John Hynes about that, the disappointment of being eliminated from playoff contention, but still coming home to play 2 playoff-like games against good teams. Here's what John Hynes had to say about how he's managing these last 2 games.
The last 15 to 20 games here, the team really competing hard and trying to find different ways to win hockey games and stay in the race, and to not be able to continue that with 2 games left was disappointing. But I think it's also important that we finish strong here. We still have a lot of the same guys in the lineup, and making sure that we try to continue with the mindset that we had. But as I've said to the team a lot, like, we got to be where our feet are. We were in the playoff race. We were right there. Unfortunately, last night that was taken away from us. But now we've got to make sure that we, be where we are now, and we want to make sure that we finish strong in the last 2 games.
First off, John Hynes kind of sounds like my therapist with a "be where your feet are" kind of thing. Be in the moment. And that's good advice too, because the Nashville Predators, it's going to be real easy for some of these guys to be like, well, that sucks. Season's over. Let's just go out there for a brisk skate, go home and get some coffee and donuts, boys. I don't know why I picked coffee and donuts. I feel like there's much better food options for the Nashville Predators after a long hockey game. I digress. I think that's good advice, though, because it's really easy once you lose kind of what you're playing for in the season to kind of see not much point of it. We have seen some teams this year, like, the Detroit Red Wings, one of the, teams I follow. Hi, Steve Yzerman in the background. We've seen those teams, play so well and get to that point, and just the second they fall out of playoff contention, they implode. The Red Wings have been one of the NHL's worst teams over the past month or so. You've seen that with Ottawa Senators. You see that with a lot of teams historically in the NHL. As soon as that E pops up next to their name, or as soon as they fall out of the race, it's just a tailspin from there on out. And, the Predators, I would hope, would avoid that over these last 2 games. You have guys like we mentioned, all the young guys stepping up, but you also got veterans like, Tyson Barrie, Ryan McDonough, who want to have something to play for in these last 2 games, and they want to end the season on their terms. They lost to they lost to Winnipeg. They got knocked out of playoff contention. That's out of their hands at this point. What they can control is, let's say they win the last 2 games. Like, they beat Calgary the other night. Let's say they beat Minnesota and Colorado. Then, from that point after they lost to Winnipeg, they can be like, okay, we did everything we needed to do to finish the season strong. Like, if it wasn't like, it was out of our hands at that point, the Jets did what they needed to do to get in the playoffs. But we can also say we did, from these last 3 games forward, we did what we needed to do. And I think that's a very strong narrative is, the playoff fate was out of your hands at that point, but you finish strong. You win your games. That, I think, is the most important thing for the Nashville Predators over the last couple of games. And I hope they play with the same intensity that they did against Calgary, like they were fighting for their playoff lives. They have 2 tough teams, again, both with something to play for. So it's not going to be, an easy contest. And I would love to see the Nashville Predators tonight step up to the plate. Again, Minnesota tonight, Colorado tomorrow. We'll have a full recap of the Wild game tomorrow on Locked On Predators podcast. But for today, let's talk about the topic that a lot of Predators fans are talking about. And somehow a lot of people around the NHL are starting to talk about too. And that's Juuse Saros's Vezina chances. Can he really win the Vezina Trophy. There's a big push for people to dig a little bit deeper into the numbers. And when you do, yeah, not only is Juuse Saros the best goaltender this season, he's one of the best goaltenders of all time. Now, I'll explain what I mean by that in just a second. But first, want to take a second and mention that today's show is brought to you by one of Ann and I's personal favorites, Built Bar. If you need a delicious snack, but you don't want all the sugar and calories, then you need the best tasting protein bar ever, Built Bar. You got to try it. If you're like me and you want to make healthier snack choices, but you don't want to compromise on taste, try a Built Bar. They're healthy, but they also taste amazing. What makes them so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come in unbelievable flavors: churro, peanut butter brownie, cookies and cream, coconut, almond, plenty to choose from. But it's not just a candy bar, folks. It is a protein-packed snack, 17 grams of protein and only 4 grams of sugar and 130 calories. Perfect treat to fill you up without weighing you down. Now, you don't need to wait for a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering your Built Bars at Built.com, but now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club, and you can still get your specialty flavors at Built.com. But if you go to Walmart, you walk up to the pharmacy section, you can grab yourself a box of Built Bars, a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puff. Or if you're in Sam's Club, you can run in and grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors like brownie batter puff and churro. You can thank me later. And as always, go to Built.com to see all of the flavors available. They will deliver it right to your doorstep. You will not regret it. Tell them Ann and I sent you. So let's talk about the big conversation going around at Smashville here lately, and that's Juuse Saros. Not a hot take to say he's the team's MVP this season. He is basically the only reason the Nashville Predators are still in the playoff chase this late into the season. Should he be the Vezina Trophy winner? Now, this is interesting because Ann and I have been saying for a very long time, no, Juuse Saros is not going to win the Vezina this year. Maybe he should, but he's not going to. It seems like Linus Ullmark has kind of locked that nonsense up. But you're starting to see, and to be fair, the Predators are kind of pushing this narrative. You're starting to see more people around the league dig a little bit deeper and throw their support behind a Juuse Saros Vezina, not just nomination, a Vezina win. You know, you've seen like Shayna Goldman from The Athletic really dive in to Juuse Saros' numbers here on Twitter lately. You know, the Predators have put out a bunch of stuff. Good friend Chicken and Stats from On the Forecheck posted a really good article kind of breaking down Juuse Saros' numbers, not just this year compared to goaltenders, but historically over the past, 20, 30 years. And it's astounding to see what Juuse Saros has done. I mean, just take a look at this numbers. It's the thing with Juuse Saros is that no goaltender in the NHL has done more with less than he has this year. I mean, you think about where the Nashville Predators are right now. I mean, they are 28th in Corsi against. They're 28th in expected goals against. They're out there with teams like Montreal and Arizona and Chicago and teams that are tanking. That's how bad the Predators defense is in. 24th in high danger chances. But look at Juuse Saros towards the top of the league in a number of stats. Number 1 in stolen wins this year. He's in the top 10 in save percentage. He's in the top 3 in high danger save percentage. But second overall in total saves this season. Nobody has done with more than less this season than Juuse Saros. And this is like the 3rd or 4th year in a row he's absolutely taken that narrative. So you look at his numbers. This came from Evolving Hockey. Juuse Saros in terms of goals above replacement, which is basically like how many total goals is this goaltender stealing for you? Like, is the tide turning? Like, basically, like more or less the goaltender stealing wins for you. Juuse Saros is the single season all-time goals above replacement winner in terms of goaltenders, as long as they've been tracking this stack. In terms of goaltenders, no goaltender has had a higher GAR than Juuse Saros since they started tracking this. And this goes all the way back to the mid-2000s. More than Igor Shesterkin, who won the Vezina last year, more than Henrik Lundqvist in his Vezina years, more than Carey Price in the year Carey Price won the most valuable trophy. Like, he has had a better GAR than Carey Price did when he was not only the best goaltender, but the best player in the league. Juuse Saros is putting up numbers that are historic in terms of the advanced analytics. And like I said, no goaltender has done more with less this year than Juuse Saros. And I think when you dive in, if you're talking about goaltenders who are the most valuable to their team, it feels like a lot of the Vezina Trophy conversation is going to come down to just that. How are voters going to interpret what the Vezina is? Is this just the goaltender who had the best year with the best numbers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Or is this the goaltender who is the most valuable goaltender, like the MVP for goalies? How are voters going to interpret the Vezina? Because if you interpret it just as is, like what goaltender had the best season, it's hard to overlook what Linus Ullmark has done. I mean, he is putting up some fantastic numbers this year. I mean, like 930 save percentage. This guy is out of his mind, like leader in wins, all that good stuff. A lot of the traditional stats, he is putting up outstanding numbers. But you dig deeper into the analytics, and that's where you see that same narrative of Juuse Saros doing more with less than any other goaltender really over the last couple of decades. So if the voters can take that aside and dive into some of these advanced analytics, you're starting to see a stronger case for Juuse Saros. And if you're talking about the most valuable goaltender to your team, there's no question. That's Juuse Saros. Juuse Saros is the Nashville Predators over these last couple of months. I mean, he has taken a team that should have been in the bottom of the entire NHL pretty much this whole year. And he has taken that and he has morphed them into a team that was in the playoff conversation with 4 games left in the regular season. Like, he is somebody that it's just what he's done this year is unbelievable. And there hasn't really been a goaltender that has taken a team that should have been so bad. And I'm not just talking about like mediocre, like elevating a mediocre team into the playoffs. I'm talking about a team that should have been one of the worst in this league. Maybe a dark horse Bedard contender, depending on how some things shake out. He's taken that and he's elevated them a team that was really one win over the Jets away from controlling their playoff fate in the last week of the NHL's regular season. I just haven't heard of a goaltender that's been able to do that as frequently as Juuse Saros has. I think the one thing I will say in Linus Ullmark's defense, and I want to get this other side too, I don't think that Linus Ullmark should be a victim of circumstance. You know, you play with the hand you're dealt, that sort of thing. Because everybody's talking about, well, it's like, yeah, of course, Linus Ullmark is putting up insane numbers. He is on the historically best team in the NHL regular season ever. And I think a lot of people are trying to use that as a knock, especially here in Nashville. But I also don't think that should necessarily disqualify him. I mean, yeah, he's got a way better defense in front of him. But I mean, the shots he is facing, he's stopping at a pretty high rate. 938 save percentage. You know, maybe it's a little bit easier when you're stopping 23 of 20 shots or 23 of 24 shots rather than, you know, Juuse Saros stopping 46 of 47 shots. but he's still, racking up those saves. 189 save percentage, 40 wins, 6 losses this season. He only even has 1 regulation loss. So he's doing what he needs to get done. And I don't necessarily think that you should disqualify him just for being on a good team. Again, I think it's a goaltender who's done the most with the situation he's given. And if it's that, then it's definitely Juuse Saros, but I don't think that you should ignore, Linus Ullmark's video game stats just because he's on a good team. Again, this is all going to come down to how voters interpret that reward. Is it just the goaltender that's put up the best numbers, been the best stats, kind of been the strongest backstop for a team? Or is it the goaltender who you take him out of the lineup and that team just careens the other way? Because if you're just going based on stats, it absolutely should be Linus Ullmark. If you're talking about value, if you're talking about analytics, then I think there's a very strong case for Juuse Saros to be your Vezina winner this year. We'll wrap things up in a second. As we said, the Nashville Predators are out of the playoff race. And the question we ask, how should we view this season for the Nashville Predators? This incredible, almost miraculous run to the Stanley Cup playoffs they have no business being in, overshadowed a lot of drama to start the year. So that's the question we're going to ask next. How should we view this season? First, though, want to take a second and mention today's show is brought to you by Game Time. I think everybody has been in the situation where they want to go to a hockey game, concert, other sporting event, whatever. You're trying to buy tickets. You're trying to find them last minute. There's all these fees. People are jacking up prices. You don't know if you can get tickets together. You see like tickets for $20 and all of a sudden, other retailers throw in like $50 worth of fees. And all of a sudden you're paying lower bowl prices for upper bowl tickets. Buying tickets to your favorite sporting events shouldn't be that stressful. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all of the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. They have killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, so you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event, and you can get exclusive flash deals for tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and of course, hockey. And the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. That's why it's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country. So snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use codes LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, so the Nashville Predators season is wrapping up, folks. We got 2 games left tonight against the Minnesota Wild, tomorrow against the Colorado Avalanche. Ann and I have been so into this full, narrative of the Predators diving into the postseason, this miraculous postseason run, the rise of guys like Luke Evangelista and Cody Glass down the stretch and Tommy Novak and all these players that have come out of nowhere to just put this team on their backs. Juuse Saros, as we mentioned, being in the Vezina chase. It does kind of overshadow what happened at the start of the year, doesn't it? So that's the question, is how do we view this year? Because as good as the Nashville Predators have been over this last, month of the season, all these miraculous things that have happened, this Juuse Saros run and Tommy Novak rising to the occasion, and guys like Luke Evangelista making their debut, Phil Tomasino making their triumph. The Predators were in this situation where they needed a miracle run to get back in the playoff conversation for a reason. And that is because what happened at the start of the season. Remember, this was a team that was supposed to compete. a lot of people, whether the national outlets pegged it or not, the Nashville Predators believe they would be competitors for the Stanley Cup this season. That's why they loaded up. I mean, they thought they were going to take a big step forward. They had career years from Roman Josi, Philip Forsberg, and Matt Duchene. You brought in some guys like Ryan McDonough. That was a big trade. And judging by the size of his cap hit, a big commitment to get Ryan McDonough in. You paid money to get Nino Niederreiter. You doubled down on some of these players. You gave Philip Forsberg a huge contract to try to keep the band together because you felt like you were going to make a run to the postseason. And it just never happened. I mean, the Predators just couldn't get out of their own early in the season. And we talked about this. The depth wasn't there. You counted on some guys being able to reproduce what they did last year. Tanner Jeannot, I would say, was, kind of a disappointment. Nino Niederreiter played well, but not nearly the impact you thought you were going to have. You had, Mikael Granlund taking a big step back. Some guys like, Matt Duchene, not quite as sharp as he was last year. Even somebody like Roman Josi, who, made, I would say, more uncharacteristic mistakes in such a short time that we really can remember seeing him since he first came to the Nashville Predators. The Nashville Predators were an absolute mess to start the season. And that's why I think looking back on the season, the story of the season becomes a little bit complicated, doesn't it? Because it ends with a strong note. And sometimes it's how the story ends rather than the story itself. Case in point, look at last season. Nashville Predators had a lot to celebrate last year. Like we mentioned, guys with career years. You had Roman Josi, probably should have gotten the Norris Trophy. You had Juuse Saros in the Vezina conversation. You were, first place in the NHL for a very long time. There's a lot of great stuff. But again, how did the story end? They fumbled down the stretch. They lost some very winnable games. They wound up getting absolutely embarrassed in the first round of the playoffs. And that led to a season maybe with more discourse than ever before. This season kind of feels like the opposite. This was a season full of discourse. This is a season full of underperforming players, a team that just looks sloppy, a lot of questionable roster decisions. And it's kind of being overshadowed here lately by what's happened in the past month or so. All these young players stepping up, Juuse Saros putting the team on his back, the team winning games, the team crawling back into a playoff chase. It's kind of erased a lot of what happened at the beginning of the season, just like last year's bad ending erased a lot of the good things that happened towards the beginning of the season. So what's the perspective on this season? At the end of the day, it all comes down to one goal, and that's competing for the Stanley Cup. And at the end of the day, the Preds enter the season with the goal of trying to compete for the Stanley Cup. At the end of the day, they fell short of their goal. So if you're looking at that perspective, this season was a big step back from last season. The only difference is I think there's more optimism headed into the future than there was last season. It's going to be an interesting debate, and I want to hear your take. Let us know. Tweet us at LO_Predators or leave a comment on our YouTube channel. Let us know what you think the narrative of this season should be. Would love to absolutely see your comments on this. Again, Nashville Predators, 2 more games left in the regular season. They got Minnesota tonight. We'll have a full breakdown of that game tomorrow on the Locked On Predators. Plus another interesting conversation. Has John Hynes done enough to earn a second chance as head coach of the Nashville Predators? That is a topic I think a lot of you are going to want to stand around for. In the meantime, you can read my work at penaltyboxradio.com. Follow me on Twitter at _NSMorgan. And as always, follow the show, LO_Predators. However you're listening to us, whether you're watching us on YouTube, streaming us on your favorite podcasting platform, please hit that subscribe button. Really helps us out, and you'll be the first to know when we got new content on for you. That's going to do it for us on today's Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day. We will be back tomorrow with an all-new episode. We'll see you then.